Welcome back to the Exposure History channel. Be sure to subscribe and like so you don't miss out on more videos like this one. This is the White Pass and Yukon Railway Station in Alaska around 1900. These guys are prospectors at a train station in Alaska. They're waiting, resting, maybe heading out for gold. This stop was huge during the Klondike Gold Rush. People hiked through snowy mountain passes. They're loaded with coats, tools, and survival gear. Each person needed nearly 2,000 pounds of supplies. That was the rule if you wanted to enter Canada. Imagine standing here, packed and freezing, hoping for gold. Pretty intense setup for what looks like just a train stop. This is a photo of Spotted Tail, taken around 1869. Spotted Tail was a major leader of the Northern Cheyenne. He's calm, seated, wearing traditional clothing with quiet confidence. This isn't just any portrait, he carried serious respect. You can feel the presence, even through the photo. One look, and you know people listened when he spoke. Leaders like him balanced tradition, conflict, and tough choices. Isn't it wild how much a single photo can say? This photo shows the Deadwood coach in 1889, basically the OG cross-country ride. In the Gold Rush days, this was how you got to town. No trains, no roads, just rough trails and wooden wheels. Looks cool now, but imagine hours bouncing on dirt paths, packed in tight, dusty, and maybe pretty smelly inside. This was travel before comfort and way before air conditioning. Kind of makes traffic jams seem not so bad, right? This is the old Zuri Mission Church, photographed in 1873 in New Mexico, one of the earliest mission-style buildings in New Mexico. Spain used missions like this to convert native peoples. Check out the adobe walls, simple, strong, and made to last. It's a mix of cultures built from what was around. No steeples or stained glass, just raw, practical design. Hard to imagine daily life when this was brand new. This place has stood through centuries of change, and it's still here. This is the 6th Cavalry Training Horses at Fort Bayard around 1885. It was a key military base during the westward expansion. Soldiers here trained hard to survive harsh desert conditions. The terrain was rough with hot days, cold nights, and barely any water. Even the horses had to toughen up for patrol duty. This wasn't parade training. It was real prep for frontier life. Ever think how much depended on well-trained horses back then? Every drill out here was about staying alive out there. That's Company B of the 10th Infantry crossing the Gila River, 1885. This unit was part of the Buffalo Soldiers, African-American troops. They served across the West after the Civil War. Tough terrain, long marches, and little recognition at the time. Crossing rivers like this, just another day on duty. They were known for grit, discipline, and never backing down. This photo captures both movement and a legacy that deserves more spotlight. That's Chief Iron Bear at Fort Bold, North Dakota, around 1866. He played a key role in native resistance during U.S. expansion. His stance here is calm, but there's strength in his expression. The clothing, the posture, it all speaks to quiet authority. Leaders like him faced massive pressure to protect their people. One photo, but it captures a whole era of resistance. Isn't it powerful how much history lives in one image? This is a Chinese camp at the end of the Central Pacific Railroad. The photo was taken in 1866 during the railroad's rapid expansion. These workers did the hard stuff, blasting rock, laying track, nonstop. Most lived in tents like this, far from towns or comfort. Long hours, low pay, and dangerous conditions were the norm. But without them, the railroad wouldn't have happened. 7 astronomers, all set up on a farm in Texas. This was July 29, 1878, just before a total solar eclipse. They're at Southwest Nomax's farm near Fort Worth, ready to observe. No fancy observatories, just telescopes, tents, and clear skies. People traveled miles just to catch a few minutes of darkness. Eclipses were a big deal. Even then, science stopped to watch. Kinda cool how skywatching brought people together, even in 1878. One moment, one shadow, and 7 scientists chasing the sun. That's Frank E. Webner, a Pony Express rider around 1861. These guys delivered mail fast, on horseback, across wild terrain. No GPS, no rest stops, just grit and serious riding skills. The Pony Express connected east and west like never before. A steam locomotive rolling through Elk Canyon in South Dakota. This was part of the Black Hills and Fort Pierre Railroad. Photos likely from the late 1800s or early 1900s. Back then, trains like this were lifelines for towns and trade. They hauled people, supplies, and even gold through rugged terrain. No highways, no planes, just steel tracks and steam power. Kind of wild how this noisy machine changed everything. One train, one canyon, and a whole region on the move. This is the Orient Saloon in Bisbee, Arizona, around 1900. The place is packed, men in formal hats, deep into a card game. They're playing Faro, one of the hottest games back then. No poker chips here, just fast bets and quick hands. The vibe? Sharp hats, stiff drinks, and serious concentration. Imagine the noise, cards slapping, coins clinking, maybe a few cheers. Wild to think this was peak nightlife over a century ago. One room, one game, and a whole lot of swagger. This is a Salish delegation from the Flathead Reservation, photographed in 1884. They represented their people during a time of major change. The U.S. government was pushing new laws, borders, and pressure. These men stood for their communities in the middle of it all. You can see the mix of traditional and Western clothing here. They were adapting, but also resisting, negotiating, and holding their ground. This is Holliday's Overland Stage Office in Denver, taken around 1865 to 1870. It was a major hub for stagecoach travel across the American West. Before trains took over, this was how people got around. Passengers, packages, even mail, all moved through spots like this. The office looked simple, but it kept the West connected. Imagine waiting here, ticket in hand, ready for a bumpy ride. No highways, no terminals, just wheels, dust, and long-distance grit. One small building, but a huge part of how the West moved. Two hunters stand over a buffalo they just took down. Fort Pierre, 1903. Back then, buffalo hunting was a booming, brutal business. Settlers and hunters aimed to wipe out massive herds. Why? To clear land and weaken native tribes who relied on them. This wasn't just sport, it was part of a larger push west. One photo, one buffalo, and a whole lot of consequences. Hard to look at now, knowing how few were left after. Chinese merchants stand outside Upper Chinagong and Company in Arizona, 1894. It's a dry goods store. Think food, fabric, tools, everyday stuff. They ran businesses, served communities, and held things together out west. Stores like this were lifelines, especially in remote frontier towns. You don't always hear about Chinese merchants in the Old West, but they were here, working, trading, and building roots. Kind of cool seeing history that doesn't make the textbooks, right? One storefront, a few men, and a big piece of forgotten history. Work teams in Sturgis, Dakota Territory, photographed between 1887 and 1892. Sturgis was a busy trade and transport hub back then. You've got wagons, gear, and crews ready to move goods fast. This was the engine of westward expansion, people, freight, and muscle. Everything came through spots like this: supplies, settlers, and stories. Hard work, long days, and no modern machines to help. Ever think about how much ground they covered with just wagons? One photo, but it shows the grind behind building the West. Two Apache women sit quietly around a campfire, photographed around 1903. They're dressed in traditional clothing, surrounded by a simple, rugged setting. This scene reflects the Apaches' nomadic, resilient way of life. They lived in dry, remote areas of the Southwest, harsh but home. No towns, no comforts, just strength, skill, and deep connection to land. Kind of amazing how much life and culture fit into one frame. One fire, two women, and a whole history of survival. This 1874 photo shows a full cavalry column led by General Custer. You've got horses, artillery, and supply wagons all on the move. They were deep in the Black Hills during a major expedition. Just 1 year later, Custer would fall at Little Bighorn. This moment? Calm before one of history's most famous defeats. Hard to believe that right here it still looks so organized. One photo, tons of firepower, and a general headed toward history. This is the east side of the plaza in Santa Fe, around 1866. It's one of the oldest cities in the U.S., seriously old. Back then, it was a buzzing hub for trade and culture. You'd see merchants, travelers, soldiers, all crossing paths right here, adobe buildings, wooden carts, and the sound of deals being made. Ever think about how much history one plaza can hold? This spot was where the Old West met deep tradition. That's a Wells Fargo stagecoach in Cisco, California, around 1868. These coaches weren't just for passengers, they moved mail and money too. Wells Fargo was huge in the West for secure transport. Strong boxes, letters, and sometimes gold all rode in that coach. It wasn't a smooth ride, think dirt roads and armed guards. Can you imagine trusting your paycheck to a bouncing wagon? One coach, one company, and a whole lot riding on it. This group is in Guthrie, Indian Territory, around 1889. Caption says, holding down a lot. They're standing by a makeshift tent, staking claim to land. This was right after the land run, when settlers rushed in. No houses, no streets, just tents, flags, and hopeful faces. It's a raw glimpse of colonization and westward expansion in action. Can you imagine claiming your future with just a tent and hope? One photo, one patch of land, and a massive moment in U.S. history. This group of soldiers was photographed at Fort Totten, North Dakota, around 1881. The fort was a key outpost during the westward expansion. These troops helped maintain order and protect expanding U.S. borders. Long days, tough conditions, and constant patrols were part of the job. It wasn't all battles. Most of it was just keeping things stable. Kind of wild how much frontier security rested on forts like this. One photo, a few soldiers, and the backbone of border control. Chinese workers on the railroad, probably in the Sierra Nevada, around 1868. They were building the Transcontinental Railroad by hand in brutal conditions, blasting rock, laying track, and surviving snow, heat, and danger daily. Most of the hardest work? Done by these crews, but not remembered enough. They lived in camps, worked with dynamite, and rarely got credit. Ever realized how much U.S. progress rode on their backs? One photo, a mountain pass, and a team that built history. That's John Delane's wagon shop in Bickenbow, Custer County, Nebraska, 1889. This place built wagons for pioneers heading west across rough country. No cars, no trucks, just wooden wheels and a whole lot of hope. Shops like this kept the frontier moving, one axle at a time. Can you imagine trusting your journey to something built right here? One small shop, but it helped carry big dreams westward. This is the crew of the picture boat at Diamond Creek, 1871. They're on the banks of the Colorado River, rugged, remote, and fast-moving. Boats like this were essential for exploring and navigating the area. No roads, no rails, just water, oars, and a strong crew. Diamond Creek was a key stop along these river routes. Ever think about charting maps with nothing but a wooden boat? One river, one crew, and a whole lot of courage. That's a miner's cabin in the Platte Mountains, Colorado, photographed in 1875. It's small, rough, and built by hand, just enough to get by. Miners stayed here while hunting for gold and silver in the hills. No luxury, no heat, just a roof and maybe a stove. Living like this? All for a shot at striking it rich. Kind of wild what people endured chasing shiny rocks, right? One cabin, a few tools, and a whole lot of hope. It's a street scene from Webster, Kansas, early 1900s, small town life in motion. You've got horse-drawn wagons, storefronts, and folks going about their day. No cars, no noise, just dirt roads and simple routines. Shops lined the street, serving a tight-knit farming community. Can you picture running errands like this every single day? One photo, everyday life, and a window into a quieter world. This is Flagstaff, Arizona Territory around 1899, right as it was growing fast. You can see stone and wood buildings starting to shape the town. It was becoming a real center in the American West. No skyscrapers, just sturdy structures and wide, dusty streets. Can you imagine this place before paved roads and traffic lights? One photo, a few buildings, and a city on the rise. This street scene is from Flagstaff, Arizona, photographed in 1889. Back then, it was just starting out as a railroad hub. You can see small wooden buildings and open, dusty ground. No sidewalks, no pavement, just a town slowly taking shape. It's early growth, but you can feel the momentum building. Ever think how cities like this started from almost nothing? One street, a few buildings, and the start of something big. It's a Mexican wedding in San Jose, New Mexico, photographed by Charles Pierce. You can see the whole community gathered, dressed up, celebrating together. This was a traditional wedding moment, full of music, food, and pride. No big venues, just people, tradition, and lots of heart. Ever seen joy captured so simply and perfectly in one shot? One photo, one celebration, and a culture coming together. This is a camp near the sanatorium in Hyde Park, Austin, Texas, 1894. You've got tents set up in one of Austin's greener areas. Back then, fresh air was part of the treatment plan. Sanatoriums were used for all kinds of health conditions, especially tuberculosis. Not exactly luxury, but this was considered top care at the time. Can you imagine camping out to feel better? One camp, one clinic, and a glimpse into early medicine. A Native American man stands in front of a teepee in 19th century Minnesota. Teepees like this were used by Great Plains tribes on the move. They were portable, weather-resistant, and perfect for nomadic life. Set up fast, take down faster, ideal for following games and seasons. Simple design, but smart and built for survival. Ever seen a home that packs up better than a tent? One man, one teepee, and a lifestyle built to move. This was Perry, Oklahoma's first water supply, snapped on September 10, 1893. Just a basic setup, but back then, it was a big deal. Clean water meant survival, growth, and real settlement. No pipes underground, just tanks, barrels, and grit. Hard to imagine now, right? But this was modern progress in the Wild West. This is Hobbs Dance Hall in Clifton, Arizona, snapped in 1884. Miners worked hard and danced even harder here. It was the go-to spot for blowing off steam. Rough boots, loud music, and packed floors every weekend. Can you picture the energy inside that old wooden hall? It wasn't fancy, but it was the heart of the town. This is Gold Hill, Nevada, around 1867 or 1868. Looks dusty, right? But it was booming back then. Gold Rush fever brought thousands here, chasing fortune. Miners worked deep underground, hoping to strike it rich. Ever wonder what it smelled like with all that ore and sweat? This was one of the wildest hotspots of the Nevada Gold Rush. A hotel and meat market in Klondike, California, back in 1892. Yep, that was the town's main stop for sleep and steak. Klondike was growing fast, kind of a pit stop for travelers. No gas stations or drive-thrus. This was your best bet. Fun fact, towns like this popped up almost overnight. Imagine grabbing a room and a roast under one roof. That's Chestnut Street in Leadville, Colorado, during the Silver Rush. This place was packed with miners chasing shiny dreams. Shops, saloons, and action. Leadville had it all. It wasn't just a mining camp. It became a real city, fast. Fun fact, at its peak, Leadville rivaled Denver in size. Ever think a silver boom could build a whole town? This is Central City, Colorado, around 1864. Back then, it was buzzing with miners and fortune hunters. Dirt roads, wooden buildings, and dreams of striking it rich. This town helped kick off Colorado's mining boom. Surprise, it was once nicknamed the richest square mile on Earth. Hard to believe this quiet-looking place had such wild energy, right? That's the International Hotel in Virginia City, Nevada, shot in the 1860s. It was the go-to spot during the Silver Rush boom. Miners, travelers, and even outlaws probably passed through here. Virginia City was rich, literally, and this hotel saw it all. Fun fact, it had one of the first elevators west of the Mississippi. Back then, it was a big deal on the Santa Fe Railroad line. Travelers stopped here to rest, trade, or catch the next train. See those buildings? That's what growth looked like in the Wild West. Here's a cool fact. Hays was once a wild cow town before railroads tamed it. This is Virginia City, Montana, in the 1890s, Gold Rush Central. It boomed fast thanks to massive gold finds in nearby hills. Every building here has a story of risk, luck, or fortune. Fun fact, at one point Virginia City had more gold than people. In 1907, in Okanogan, Washington, this cow carried 7 kids to class. Yup, a cow, no bus, no wagon, just one very patient animal. It was pretty normal in rural towns with few resources. Who needs a school bus when you've got a cow taxi? May 10, 1869, Promontory Summit, Utah. Workers pose after finishing the first transcontinental railroad. It took 6 years, 20,000 workers, and 15,000 were Chinese immigrants. This photo marks the day East and West were finally connected. William Buffalo Bill Cody, 1871, part legend, part showman. First a bison hunter, then a global star, Cody brought the myth of the Wild West to life on stage. Through his performances, he helped define how the world imagined frontier life, cowboys, Indians, and all. In 1892, towering piles of bison skulls in Detroit told a grim story. Once numbering in the millions, bison were hunted nearly to extinction. Their remains were processed into fertilizer and charcoal, a stark reminder of industrial demand meeting ecological cost. Jesse James, born in Missouri, was a legendary outlaw of the American West. A former Confederate guerrilla, he led the James Younger Gang in a series of bold bank and train robberies. His criminal career turned him into a folk hero, though many saw him as a symbol of lawlessness after the Civil War. At exactly noon on April 22, 1889, the wildest race in American history began, the Oklahoma Land Rush. Some 50,000 hopeful settlers surged across the plains, chasing dreams and dust clouds as they raced to claim a piece of over 2 million acres of unassigned land. Armed with wagons, horses, and grit, they could seize up to 160 acres for free so long as they lived on and developed it. The stakes were sky high, tensions even higher. In minutes, entire towns sprang up on the prairie. What began as a land claim turned into a raw, thrilling contest of survival, ambition, and the boundless American spirit. It was chaos. It was history. It was the Wild West at full gallop. Camillus S. Fly's legendary 1883 photograph captures the Peace Commission of Dodge City, Kansas, a lineup that reads like a roll call of Old West legends. From left to right, Charles Bassett, W. H. Harris, Wyatt Earp, Luke Short, El McLean, Bat Masterson, and Neil Brown, all posed with steely gazes and pistols at their sides. These men weren't just lawmen, they were icons of frontier justice, brought together to bring order to the unruliest town in the West. Dodge City was a powder keg, and these were the men trusted to keep the fuse from sparking. The photo remains a powerful symbol of grit, gunslinging honor, and the raw tension of the American frontier. In 1882, flames tore through Tombstone, Arizona, leaving behind the charred remains of the OK Corral, a place already etched into legend. Just months earlier, it was the backdrop of the infamous gunfight that pitted Wyatt Earp, Doc Holliday, and the law against the Clantons and McClorys in a 30-second blaze of bullets. The fire scorched what history had already set ablaze, transforming the site from a saloon-lined gathering spot into a smoldering symbol of the lawless Wild West. In the early 1900s, Old West, a haunting tradition unfolded in many frontier homes, wives kneeling before their husbands each year to beg forgiveness for their shortcomings. This ritual wasn't just symbolic, it was a stark reflection of the harsh gender roles that dominated the time. Women were expected to be submissive, obedient, and penitent, while men held unquestioned authority. Beneath the dusty towns and booming saloons lay a society steeped in control and silence, where even private moments were ruled by cultural obedience. It's a chilling reminder that behind the romance of the Wild West was a world where personal dignity was often sacrificed on the altar of tradition. In 1888, a lone rider posed proudly with a freshly hunted antelope strapped to his horse, a striking image of survival on the rugged frontier. Hunting wasn't just a sport in the Old West, it was a lifeline. In isolated rural regions, families depended on game for food, trade, and survival through harsh seasons. This antelope, bound and heavy, symbolized more than a meal. It was a victory over a relentless land that gave nothing freely. The echo of the rifle, the scent of dust and sweat. This was frontier life, raw, unforgiving, and fiercely self-reliant. In 1875, a rare and haunting photograph captures General George Armstrong Custer standing outside his tent, flanked by 3 Native American scouts during the Yellowstone expedition. This frozen moment reflects a time of tense alliances and fragile trust, where indigenous men served alongside the very force expanding into their ancestral lands. The uneasy smiles and stiff posture hint at the looming storm, a complex dance of loyalty, survival, and betrayal. In September 1885, 11-year-old Jimmy McKinn was captured by Geronimo and his band of Apache warriors. Held in the wild for months, the boy adapted quickly to the Apache way of life, so deeply in fact that when the Apaches were finally detained in March 1886, Jimmy stunned onlookers by refusing to return to his family. He had become one of them, in spirit and in loyalty. In a chilling example of frontier justice, George Parrott, infamously known as Big Nose George, met a gruesome end in 1881, but his story didn't stop at the noose. After his execution, local doctors skinned his body, turning his hide into masks and shoes. Yes, actual human leather artifacts. These grotesque trophies weren't just morbid curiosities. They served as grim reminders of the brutal and unforgiving law enforcement methods of the American Old West. What began as a criminal tale ended as a macabre legend, immortalizing Big Nose George in one of the most bizarre and shocking punishments in Western history. In 1887, cowboys in Wyoming chased a large gray wolf. They rode fast on horses across the vast western plains. Using only lariats, they captured the wild animal with skill. The wolf resisted fiercely but was eventually brought to ground. This daring hunt showed cowboy courage and frontier survival instincts. The moment symbolized man's grit against the wild, untamed West. If you like this video, make sure to subscribe to this channel so you don't miss out on anything.